What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Spill the Tea. I'm glad that you guys can join me again. By the topic of the conversation, you can obviously see what we're about to talk about here. So I'm just going to dive right into it and get started with it. You know, most people are taught that healing means the darkness. That means erasing the darkness inside of you. That if you just become positive enough, calm enough, spiritual enough, that the darker parts of you will disappear. That's not really how trauma works. And that's definitely not how real life works. And I'm not here to teach you how to destroy your darkness or anything like that. You know, I'm just here to talk about how you can walk beside it without letting that darkness lead. Because having real balance in life and also with inside yourself, it's not about choosing that light side of you or the dark side of you. It's learning how to be able to carry both sides of you consciously. And that's a very tough feat. Some of the biggest misunderstandings is that most people think that balance, you know, again, choosing the light and rejecting that dark side of you. And that's just avoidant. You're just avoiding that part of you. And that darkness didn't come from anywhere. It was learned. It was modeled and it adapted. And, you know, if you grew up around chaos, violence, emotional instability, or unpredictable things inside your lifetime, you know, eventually your nervous system learned certain traits that it needed to in order to survive these things. You know, it learned anger or control or hypervigilance or, you know, just being emotionally shut down. And those weren't flaws, they were survival responses. At one point, they did protect you. Through my own lived experience, you know, I learned this very early, you know, before I had any kind of words for it. You know, growing up and later joining the military, you know, having that discipline, that structure, and that control kept me safe. And those traits worked in environments where weakness wasn't an option at all. But when life started to really slow down, that's when, you know, peaceful life started to show up. And the traits that I had learned to survive, they didn't disappear. You know, they stayed alert inside of me. I always stayed armed and full in armor, that metaphorical armor that we've spoken about before. Because to me, chaos was always familiar, especially growing up. And so peace to me was just like a foreign land. I didn't understand peace. and sometimes peace can feel incredibly uncomfortable. You know, again, when you've lived in chaos, such as myself, growing up in the state care and in foster care your whole life, and, you know, having abusive parents that don't care about you, and then also now joining in the military and being at times of war and seeing that kind of chaos, you know, peace was incredibly foreign to me. And so it didn't feel safe at all. Your body, my entire body was used to that kind of intensity. And my mind was always used to scanning and being alert to everything. So when nothing is truly going on and you're just sitting here and you don't have to worry about anything, you know, in your mind, you feel like something should be happening. And that's why some people, especially myself, you know, they sabotage healthy relationships. You know, why certain calm partners may feel boring to you, or why peaceful environments make you kind of restless. And here's, you know, a lot of the parts that most people miss is that when stress hits, that unintegrated shadow, that darkness side of you comes out as control, dominance, or intensity. And what feels like strength to you can feel unsafe to someone whose nervous system never lived on chaos. And that disconnection starts to create distance within a relationship. So then, you know, people will always tell you, well, just be positive. And basically that's choosing the light side of life. You know, people will always, especially with myself, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard these, you know, just be positive and let go of the past and choose peace. But you can't choose peace. How can you choose peace when all you've known was chaos? especially if your body doesn't even recognize peace. And trying to destroy that dark part of you, and trying to forget that side of you only makes that side of you even louder. And so having real balance isn't about suppressing either side, it's about integrating both into one. As a man who lives with PTSD, and I would love to say something incredibly clearly, you don't cure PTSD. There is no cure for PTSD. There is no medication that you can take to get rid of it. Sure, there are ways to work with it. You can do, your therapy sessions, especially with a psychologist, and they preach, mindfulness and stuff like that. Especially working with the VA, I absolutely love the Newington and West Haven, Connecticut VA. They are amazing doctors. And especially dealing with their therapists, they do have a mindfulness app that they suggest that you download. And it's all about, obviously like a meditation practice. And mindfulness, especially during my psychology studies, mindfulness is the number one direction that all psychologists try to use. And I absolutely will stand by it. But again, there is no cure for PTSD. There is zero cure for it. And what you must do is you have to learn how to strengthen the core that's around it. These intrusive thoughts, they're not beliefs. They're just your nervous system that is echoing to you. And healing isn't about trying to silence them or suppress them. It's about learning how to not obey them. And that's what integration actually looks like. Your dark side doesn't just disappear, it just changes the job inside of you. It stops driving and it starts informing you why you're starting to feel the way that you're feeling, or why these intrusive thoughts are coming to you. And this took a very long time for me to actually work through, for me to understand, and for me to dive incredibly deep into it, so I had a better understanding of what is actually going on with me, especially inside my mind and my nervous system. It takes a lot of work. And eventually, once you start doing majority of that work, it starts to become awareness instead of instant reaction. The signal instead of following that command to act on those intrusive thoughts. And that's what I mean by walking beside your darkness, not in front of it, not behind it, and not pretending that it isn't there. That same balance that you can integrate in life, the light and the dark, also shows up even for, most people, for every single person actually. It shows up even in money in your life. And this same exact pattern, it shows up, especially through my lived experience. I grew up incredibly poor. Again, I was a state child. Through the foster care system, everything like that. So I always knew in my mind that I had to work. If I wanted to make a life of my own, I knew that I needed to do it, that no one was going to come save me, that I needed to start getting to work. And I needed to money. I needed to start earning money, making money, buying my own things, and doing etc. And so I always knew how to work. I would always knew how to just show up and be consistent, dependable, and all of that. And so I always knew how to earn a lot of money. The problem with that being, though, is I didn't always know how to let money stay. And that's not because I was being irresponsible with my money. I would always pay my bills. I would always make sure everything was taken care of, and I had everything that I needed. It was just a regulation problem. I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system. And so, growing up poor, your nervous system is wired for scarcity, not stability. So now, as you become older, you now integrate both to have the balance. So now, since what I've been doing for many years now, is, you invest into the future. Especially for myself, I have children, so I try to invest, for the future for my children, for, the stability, the house that I buy, the cars that I drive, the clothes that I wear, the clothes that my children's wear, make sure that they're all taken care of. So you invest for the future in those things. I invest also for, travel. I love to travel. but also I invest for my legacy, and my legacy will probably live through to my children. But at the same time, I found the balance where I keep a small portion of the money that I earn for the here and now, the present moment. And that's for enjoyment. That's for, dinner dates, for movies, for spontaneous things that I love to do, to just feel that sense of freedom. And that also helps with my nervous system safety net. So again, that's not a weakness. You just have to learn the balance between the two. It's different money, you know what I mean? It's the same money, but just different jobs that it does. One invests for the future and one invests for the here and now. That way you can live present, but also you still look forward towards your future. But I can tell you that balance is not always 50-50. Balance, even inside of a relationship, it's never always going to be 50-50. Same with your money, same with also your mental instability. Balance isn't just equal parts of light and dark. It's just knowing when to rest, when to start pushing yourself to obtain whatever it is that you're going after, when to speak up for yourself, when to also take a pause before you speak up for yourself. It's context, but it's also self-trust. And it's built through a level of awareness, and it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is perfection. If you have ever felt like you are too much for peaceful environments, like you're just not broken. You know what I mean? I want you to understand that you're not broken. If calm atmospheres or calm people makes you feel disconnected, you're not failing in life or in relationships. What it means is that you're just early in the integration phase. Your nervous system is still learning what safety feels like, and that takes a very long time, especially if you're not aware of what's going on inside of you. It's very hard. True balance isn't about escaping who you were or who you are. It's about letting it walk beside you without letting it run your life. And that is something, again, that I have dealt with a lot in my lifetime. If this resonated with you, I go deeper into this journey into my book, A Child Called Home, where I talk about survival. I talk about identity and learning how to build peace without losing yourself. You can also check out my guide, Found It at the Right Time on Gumroad. The link is actually in the description. And if you're finding this video here, I welcome you to like, share, and subscribe to Spill the Tea. And I hope that I get to see all of you guys on the next one. Thank you guys. Have a great night.